So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the much awaited panel discussion on industrial IoT now. The panel has been deliberating and debating for the last few hours among themselves. What's the best way to kind of keep the audience engaged today? I'd like to invite the panelist on stage. Sanjeev Keskar, Managing Director of Arrow Electronics, will be the moderator. We have Sri Kumar Parikar, Director of Engineering and Technology, Electrical Sector of Eaton, India Engineering Center. Krishna Navalpakkam, Global Strategy and Development of Schneider Electric. Lalit Yagnik, Executive Chairman of Eon Reality. They are the guys who are doing the AR, VR for industrial. And lastly, our award winner of IoT Next yesterday night, Vishal Pandya, co-founder and director of RE Connect Energy. Thank you, gentlemen. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know this is the last session, and we will ensure that we'll make it as exciting as possible and as informative as possible to really make this worthwhile for your time before we close the event today evening. So, industrial IoT. We have pretty eminent panel, and they are predominantly the first three gentlemen, Vishal, Krishna and Sri Kumar. They are expert into energy and power domain, from power transmission and energy, and also the anything related to power station. But Lalit brings the experience of augmented reality and virtual reality VR. So it's a mix of panel. But what I thought when I'm kicking off this session, let me just give you an overall perspective about industrial IoT. What are the opportunities are there? And mainly there are many startups and medium industries in this hall. So let me share with you that industrial IoT is one area. The customers are not really brand cautious. In consumer IoT, people are looking for brands, but here the user cases are so wide that people are looking for the local support, for proof of concept, for prototyping, and there the small and medium industry has a huge opportunity to address the needs of industrial customers. It can be asset tracking. Every industry will need asset tracking application. It can be worker productivity. Right now my team is working on a user case where there are 500 welders, and that company wants to track the productivity of welders, how many welding spots he is making in 1 hour. So that way worker productivity in industry is a very big area. Maintenance, preventive maintenance as well as quality maintenance, that tracking also is a huge opportunity. Waste management, quality control, means you name it, in industry entire process, if you look at every domain of industry, there are opportunities for IoT applications, and that's the area where a local company or a small company also can show a lot of value addition and get opportunity into that particular domain. Particularly if we really look at the big opportunities which right now are emerging are in the area of asset tracking. We are seeing a huge opportunity. Surveillance security is also opening up a very large opportunity in every industry. Okay, so I want all of you to really focus on these niche applications which are coming into industrial IoT domain and take advantage of those particular business. Right now, the way we have structured this next 1 hour is each of our panel member will get 10 to 12 minutes to present their perspective on industrial IoT, and then we are going to have a small group discussion for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will open up for Q&A. So that's the structure. So first I request Sri Kumar to present from Eaton. He heads engineering for electrical and IoT at Eaton, Pune. Can you switch on that podium mic? It's on.
Okay.
Yeah, I would take it from where Mr. Rahman left. I think from the industrial point of view, IoT is not a new world. We have been doing this kind of application for quite some time. So what I want to bring is basically when you say IoT, I think each industry should define what does it mean for them. Otherwise, it's a very broad area. People would be talking more on more on the connectivity and more on what the value we are actually at the end of the day we are going to bring back to the customer. So, can you go to the next one, please? Okay. So what I will do is today, from Eaton perspective, we have some learnings in terms of, what does that industrial IoT mean for us. So we made the industrial IoT very simplified. So I'll share some of those learnings and then I'll walk you through a couple of examples and then, what is next for industrial IoT perspective. So just to make you understand what we are, because without that perspective, it is very difficult to understand, what we are trying to do and what the end application. So we are basically a power management company. We are into electrical. We are very much competitive with ABB and Schneider. We also have portfolios which are into aerospace, into hydraulics and vehicles. So it's a very large company with a lot of industrial products that goes into machineries, that goes into aerospace, that goes into power distribution. So when you talk about connectivity and industrial IoT, it has a different meaning for us. So for example, in this page, you see all the blue dots is nothing but all the products that goes in these different areas. In an aerospace, we have, fuel pumps. If you look at in a vehicle, we have transmissions. In a automotive, we have what you call, drive chains. If you look in the hydraulic side, we have all hydraulic pumps and motors. On the electrical space, everything that is right from power systems to power distribution to power quality to all the way to lighting, we have solutions. So it's a very large segmented, kind of a product line. And so that's why we defined what does an IoT mean for us. Okay. First of all, IoT is bringing, what does it bring for us? Primarily, we kind of simplified IoT definitions in 4 areas. Okay. One is all the assets that you have. I think somebody also talked about, I think the previous session about IoT is not about internet, it's about the asset, it's about the things, right? So how do you kind of bring that kind of a data from the asset? So we are putting a lot of sensor so that the assets can generate data. Then connectivity. Again, connectivity, we are in the industrial world, we are actually driven by a lot of standards. Okay? So we are going to use industry standard protocols. We are not going to define our own protocol for the same. And then when you talk about intelligence, there are 2 aspects of, we call it as a data science. And at the end of the day, all these things should solve a customer problem. Otherwise, it becomes a connected world. So from an asset point of view, what we have is primarily we have sensors that are integrated into our products. It could be electrical, it could be mechanical, it could be fluid, or it could be something which is ambient. Okay? So we are developing, as we are developing our products, we are embedding these sensor into our products so that they become futuristic. And from a connectivity perspective, as I said, most of these are driven by industry standards. So, we need to adhere to those standards. So again, we are not developing something of our own. We are actually using what is available in the industry. What brings as a company from our learning key thing is about doing the data in the intelligence piece. Again, there are 2 things in the intelligence. One is about what we call as the digital twins, because we have a lot of our domain expert in designing a machinery. Whether all the models, whether it's a MATLAB model, whether it's a FEA model, all these data resides in that's the core for us. Okay, integrating that models with real-time data that is generated from the assets is what is differentiated for us from a industrial IoT solution point of view. So we have different type of models, whether it's a heuristics, whether it's a numerical, whether it's empirical, or whether it is physics-based. These models are the primitive ones which will drive intelligence. The second piece is primarily around intelligence, around data analytics. So what does it data analytics means? There are 4 areas. We are talking about a descriptive, which is primarily a dashboard kind of a thing. We are talking about diagnostics, something can fail, right? Why and where did it fail? And the last two are about predictive and mostly around prescriptive. So we clearly defined the data analytics piece of it and the data twins. And for us, this is what is a IoT means for us. So we're calling it as an intelligent power. A digital analytics with digital twins is what is going to give a real customer problem. So our industrial applications will not be able to just only looking at the data. If I look at about 8 years back, we actually had a motor wellness program where the induction motors could be predicted for its health, just looking at simply the data. But we had a lot of failure because again, we are not looking at all the different use cases. But integrating the motor physics along with the data that is coming out from the motor and the assets is really going to help us to take it to the next level. Okay. So I think our platforms are based on these 4 areas. Again, I just want to bring it back because I think that's where most of our solutions are built. So I'm going to pick up 3 specific example and how we have basically helped industrials. So if you look at from our vehicle point of view, we have a product called IntelliConnect. We make transmission, which is only a part of it's not a it's the one which is interfacing between your engine and your the wheels, right? So all these transmissions that are sold, we typically have certain warranty clause. Okay, we have certain reliability things. So what this is going to help is our fleet owners could basically schedule their maintenance looking at the data that is generated. So we have right now running a program called IntelliConnect, which is live, which can monitor close to about more than 20,000 trucks in the US geographically and help the people to know, the people who are actually owning the truck to say when they need to go to the next service station. So that's the current, the model that we have. Another one that we have is, since we have a lot of lighting products, one of the challenges that we had in a stadium lighting is if some of the luminaires that goes off while a match is being played, okay, it's a huge dissatisfaction from the customer. So actually we piloted a project whereby all these lights are connected. The data is actually getting pushed into cloud, and there is a lot of back-end work that is being done to create that intelligence, and then we are pushing that intelligence algorithm into into the near to the stadium. So I think again, if you look at we have classified along in these 4 different lines, and definitely there is a clear business case in this case too. The last one is about microgrid. You all talked about renewables, right? So again, in order to really create the differentiator in the renewable market, what we are creating is a digital twin of a microgrid so that we can scale it up. Currently, we have close to 2,200 installations worldwide, and the data that is generated from that is huge. Along with our what we call it as a digital twin, what we're calling it as a virtual microgrid. In fact, our lab in Pune, we have actually a virtual microgrid physically that can simulate the entire renewables and the other power sources. So mixing with these, we are able to basically help our customers to basically manage the power and manage the energy well. I think these are a couple of use cases in which we are heavily involved. There are other use cases which I'm not going to talk about today, but we already have a lot of solutions around power systems, or it's in a data center, for example, we have a lot of our power quality where it's again connected, and the intelligence lies typically close to the assets. So whenever an industrial IoT that we're talking about, it is more around, more closer to the asset. What is going to be the, the value that we are going to create for customer through those assets. So one of the important thing is we are actually growing our portfolio. As I said, we are putting sensor to our every product that we are shipping, okay, so that it is future ready. We are building our core area around data science, and we are open for, again, industry partnership or startups where, we can work areas where mutually exclusive. And of course, we have harmonized, like I said, we kind of really came out with this 4-step, areas where we need to focus as part of the industrial IoT. And it's pretty clear, unless the business model is very clear and we are not trying to, if you're not trying to solve a customer problem, all other becomes, we have seen failures in our past. So the business model is very critical to play any of the industrial IoT one. We have also certain things around digital factories. I know the previous speakers have spoken about it. Again, utilizing the same concept around these 4 areas. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri Kumar. Now I request Krishna to take us through what Schneider is planning to do.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here. In fact, I'm going to kind of deviate a bit. In fact, I'm going to take a bit of more of an outside-in investor view and sort of share with you some of the long-term perspectives that we have. So, in my current mission, I sort of have one leg with Schneider. We heard a lot from large industrials like Eaton. My colleague from Siemens is here. I met him last week, so I think we have had a good amount of alignment there. Yeah. On my job, I have sort of a dual role with Schneider's global strategy group, as well as I'm hosted by Astor Capital, Schneider's venture arm. So here, I wanted to give you a perspective from one of my colleagues in Astor Capital to have a long-term perspective on what's reshaping the energy value chain, right? So. And again, these are kind of the market insights that we bring to bear to the startup ecosystem that we work with, we engage with. So I'd be glad to engage on this. So, what's the new energy deal, right? So we spoke about IoT. One of the gentlemen here talked about, there's domain knowledge needed, but we understand the deep tech. How do we marry the two, right? So just to connect the dots, right? When you look at the energy value chain, what's the long-term trend going ahead? Right? We've already seen, the price of solar rock bottoming, right? So around the world, we know solar is probably the cheapest source of energy right now. Yeah. And then what is that enabling? So it's fundamentally changing the way we looked at the energy value chain, which is centrally generated and one-way direction of delivery of power to consumers, right? So it's kind of actually ramping up the distributed nature of the energy value chain. And at the same time, solar being a clean source of power, it's decarbonizing the value chain, right? And then, if you look at the second element, where we are talking about energy storage, we've talked about a range of energy storage technologies. All of you probably know quite a bit about them, and those are falling as well, right? And that's where, again, this distributed nature of the grid is going to be reinforced in a sense. So if you look at what's happening with the grid infrastructure, which is decarbonizing and more distributed, you absolutely need the third element we are talking about here, which is the tech element, what we've been discussing here, right? The IoT, the proliferation of sensors, it's all ubiquitous right now, and it's kind of really reduced the barrier. And the distributed nature of the grid requires orchestration with software, IoT, and more, for example, deep tech like machine learning to understand the state of the grid, situational awareness of the grid, to sort of orchestrate what's at different regions, different distributed areas, and to sort of coexist with the centralized grid that we've been using for centuries now, right? So this is what is happening, and to sort of, we all understand, decarbonizing, distributed, and digitized, right? So to sort of take the very futuristic view there, which is where we are talking about disruption of value chain is going to come from what actually, for example, Sean was talking about democratization of IT, right? We are talking about democratization of power of the grid, which means, communities, which is particularly businesses and consumers, are probably, the power balance in the energy value chain is going to shift towards businesses and consumers, which form the community, right? So that is what we think is an interesting future perspective. Now, this will certainly impact the entire energy value chain. So you understand, I don't even think we should be, drawing the value chain like this anymore, but just for explaining, right? So what's going to happen to distribution operators, discoms? We know the state they are in the country here, uh, already in a bad shape, but this could actually further um, distress them, right? So that could be a problem. For example, generators, we have seen in mature markets, people are talking about the demand scenario is declining, right? Maybe it's true, right? But that's probably what the knock guy sees in the grid operator's console, right? But maybe the net demand has been increasing, but there's a lot of grid defection happening, right? So what you see here is actually a declining effect, but you need to understand what's going on with generation utilities. They've been already burnt a lot. Distribution operators, right? How do they look at system flexibility, system design, system resiliency going forward, with a lot of assets distributed across a wide range of customers behind the meter, very near to the meter, and so on, right? And then retailers. Now, in India, maybe retail competition is not that much, but it's probably coming, right? And that's again what we need to think about in the future. But the need for customer engagement. So that is going to be key to see who is able to generate and capture value in this value chain. So again, we are talking a lot about technology on one side, and then there's a reality of regulations and policy making, right? So we all understand, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of engagement happening. We can take a lot of positive aspects from this. We've looked at Paris Agreement, how it was I was in the Grand Palais in France, in fact. There was a miraculous alignment of thought process with hundreds and thousands of stakeholders, right? Whether it's municipal, corporators or mayors, who are actually representatives of communities that we live in, right? And then corporations and so on, right? But at the same time, we know what's happening in the last few months with some very large countries trying to say maybe that's not the way, right? But what I feel is this interesting thing. Even though I would like to look very politically correct here, I basically think we have policy making, but businesses and consumers one at a time are going to change, reshape this value chain, right? So, and that's exactly what we have done, right? So there are taxi licensing policies, right? But then Uber, Ola, and consumers like us have reshaped and done a lot of innovation ourselves to change what's going on, right? So that is where we think this is going. But at the same time, we talked about technology and regulation playing a part here, right? What we need to understand is, irrespective of what the other angles bring, the emerging customer behavior is what we need to keep a close eye on, right? So if we take the eye of understanding deeply what customers want, that's probably not the way we'll take advantage and capture value in this value chain, right? So, but fundamentally, what customers are seeing is it does actually make economic sense to look at energy communities as a way to go forward, right? So apart from all the green social impact and so on, finally that's what it's going to come to. And when you look at long-term trends, when we look at it in Astor Capital, for example, what we look for is, we always have this feeling, if I knew when it's going to come, is it going to come in 2 years? Is it going to come in 5 years, right? But this kind of future gazing is, something we need to have something to understand what's going to play out, right? And here, what we do is a tool, like we use what we call signposts or real concrete inflection points in customer behavior to understand how we can move forward and to understand where these things are going to play out, right? So that is something that probably I'd be able to carry on with, in fact, going forward, right? So if you look at the startup landscape, so here I'm not looking at specific case studies that Schneider did. So for example, some of my colleagues have shown a lot of case studies, but we track a lot of ecosystem of startups in mature markets, for example, early signs of what's going to probably come, right? So more important than IoT and deep learning and all the tech, right? It's how do we convert these into viable business models, right? So let's give 4 examples here, right? 4 types of business model examples where end customer oriented solutions in this space. People on the left side, that's one business model where they're kind of pivoting into being an aggregator to communities, right? Then there is this utility solution providers. That's a business model where people are saying, I'm going to make progressive utilities transform to this new world, right? That's one bucket. Then the third bucket we are looking at is microgrid solution providers, which is like for providing self-sustaining, resilient microgrids for commercial and industrial companies, for example. So one example was great, what Sri Kumar mentioned, for example, right? And then the fourth one is sort of futuristic, where we are talking about transactive energy, which is peer-to-peer trading platforms where businesses and consumers can seamlessly trade on their energy, and that's sort of using tech like blockchain and distributed ledger mechanisms that we use in the fintech industry, for example, applied to the energy industry, right? So we are looking at a range of viable business models that are coming. Of course, this is not extensive. This is not exhaustive, right? We are taking a few examples. For example, Power Ledger. Yeah, they did a pilot in Australia. Right now, there's already an announcement that Mahindra is going to work with Power Ledger to make a peer-to-peer trading platform pilot in India, right? So that's a concrete example. And, and that is what we need to look at to understand how this is going to play out, how fast this is going to come. Yeah. So this is, in a nutshell, the message that I want to send across, right? The energy value chain, how we looked at it before, from commodity value is shifting to exchange value. And, because we've seen you can keep generating energy and it's a race to the bottom, right? But the availability of resilient, high quality power at a given point in time and space is valuable, right? So that is the fundamental shift that the energy value chain is probably going through, right? So, and that's a very interesting segue into what Vishal will talk about, in the work that he's doing. So we are glad that we are engaging with a bunch of very interesting ideas here. So I'd be looking forward to speak to all guys. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Krishna. So now we have a young CEO here with us, Vishal Pandya from RE Connect, and I request Vishal to take us through his presentation.
Hello, can I have my presentation, please? This would probably the most interesting presentation you would have seen during the day. Why? It has just 2 slides. Yeah. Yes, so I would start where Krishna left. It's not about the number of kilowatt hours you deal with, it's about the kilowatt at a particular point in time and space. The chart you see here is the yellow bars is basically the net demand in California ISO. The green one is the generation coming from wind. And the dark orange you see is basically the balance that a utility or a grid operator will have to manage in real time. So you can see that there are instances where the orange bar will peak up to 95% of the total requirement. And there are instances, the rightmost side of the chart, if you see, the net requirement could potentially fall up to zero because the demand has fallen significantly and the wind generation has picked up at that point in time. This is the problem with the renewable. It's intermittent. You cannot handle it without large backup and balancing power availability. But renewable is the way. How can you handle it if there is such a large degree of variation, not only in the generation, but also in the demand? Demand, by and large, is inelastic. However, it is a function of political events, socio-economic parameters, weather, and various special events that a region or a country will go through. What it calls for is basically predictive analytics, which can enable you not only forecast what's going to be the generation or net demand for tomorrow, a week after, or a month after. Uh, what we have been doing here is basically doing large scale wind and solar and demand forecasting projects all over India. So far, the focus has been pretty much in India. The accuracy benchmark that the Indian government has set using global references is about 7% error for wind and solar power forecasting. What we have been able to achieve is about 4.3 in our 3 years of development experience, you can call it. We not only forecast what will be the production of power or demand, but we also do dispatch and aggregation of energy. Karnataka has been the first state in India to go for large scale wind and solar power forecasting. Here we have been pulling together about 70 wind and solar farms, aggregating about 3000 megawatt capacity, which we dispatch to the grid operator in Karnataka. So every day there are day ahead schedules we send for energy which will be generated tomorrow, week ahead, and every day there are 16 revisions that we make, all happens in real time. We track all the wind and solar farms in real time, get the energy data, calibrate the forecast, bundle everything together, and send one schedule to the grid operator. Dispatch and balancing, which is basically how much did you schedule, how much did you generate across all those wind and solar farms, and what is the resultant error and subsequent penalties associated with those errors. All those energy settlement we carry out not only with the grid operator but all our clients that we deal with. In Karnataka alone, we have added roughly about 300 individual clients having wind and solar capacity. The map in India, you see that it's our overall presence across India, where we do a lot of private scale projects where the private party is owning either a wind and solar farm, as well as the utilities, grid operators, where we help them understand what would be the demand or solar and wind power production on a day ahead and week ahead basis. The last slide. Uh, the engagement that we have with the entire ecosystem, which is also relevant to how the ecosystem is moving. So, for example, the applicability of IoT is what the focus for the talk today is. The segment covers renewable energy producers, the conventional power producers, transmission asset owners, grid operators, which also at times own the transmission assets, distribution companies, and the end consumer. The consumer could also be categorized in either a bulk consumer or a retail consumer. You and me as an individual are retail consumers, whereas this hotel, for example, could be classified as a bulk consumer. Where we interact with the ecosystem is basically we do a lot of predictive analytics with the renewable energy producers, the grid operators. We also do a lot of transaction management services with the conventional power producers, as well as the bulk power consumers here in India. The data points where the emphasis is, the predictive analytics is applied, the IoT layer is applied, is basically with the renewable, the transmission companies, distribution we are yet to touch upon, and the consumer segment where the real-time data at times help. Overall opportunity in the entire landscape, if you see, between renewable generation assets and the conventional generation assets, there are plenty of opportunities where a combination of predictive analytics and the IoT element could be applied. For example, you would want your renewable farm or wind or solar farm to be tracked in real time. The turbine health monitoring you want to be analyzed in real time and see that the turbine or a solar plant is performing at optimal capacity. Data is available, data is not an issue, but what you do with the data is the question. Likewise, what we have been doing with the data is also forecasting, which is just one of the application. Dispatch and settlement is another. Distributed energy resources, as Krishna said earlier, that the growth is inevitable. They are going to be there, and they would most likely kill the conventional utility business in itself, whether it's a distribution or retail supply models. The world is going for a transformation, and the role of IoT, the sensors, the devices which can connect all those small generation assets, the consumer segments, transfer the data, and an application layer which can convert that into something meaningful, whether it's a load generation balancing or it's a cost optimization in real time. The peer-to-peer transaction management would also become one of the important aspects. Likewise, if you see in transmission and distribution, even in India now we are seeing that utilities are gearing up for utilizing the data in a more meaningful way, where if you for example are a transmission network operator, there are hundreds and thousands of components that you use in a transmission network. The reliability point of view, you would also be required to maintain certain spare parts associated with it. If you have a aggregated value of all the components and all, if you have real-time tracking of which asset is functioning at what level and what are the standby components needed, you can do lot more level of optimization there. Again, you need sensors, you need application which can help you monetize the data. Likewise, risk management. For example, we were interacting with one of the utilities and the requirement was that give us very accurate weather forecast data. The utility was a transmission company. Out of curiosity, we asked them, why do you need this? Their requirement was not a generic weather forecast. The requirement was extreme event forecast. If there is a cyclone coming, how am I going to manage my transmission network? Entire grid could collapse if a big transmission line fails. So data is there. How you make use of the data and the sensitivity around it matters a lot. Likewise, network optimization. It could again be yet another application where the sensors can help network operator to see what are the network nodes and points which are functional, not functional, and if the expansion needs to be carried out, where it could be planned. Right. The consumer side, which is again getting interesting, the B2B side, similar areas like performance monitoring or asset monitoring, as well as the control you can exercise with IoT and predictive analytics. The B2C segment, on the other hand, is quite becoming exciting now, where home automation is next big area where the combination of all these will go quite hand in hand, and the energy data disintegration, which could be the way where you need not put very intrusive number of devices across your house, but you can just plug in one device which can give you complete breakup of your energy consumption. How many electrical appliances, say how many microwave is running, or how many number of tube lights are running, or CFL bulbs are running, how many geysers are running. Those are the applications or IoT applications and innovations which could be the next game changer in this value chain. So with this, I would like to conclude my session and would be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. So now I request Mr. Lalit Yagnik, who is CEO of Eon Reality. Till now we were listening to industrial IoT usage into energy and power, and Lalit is going to take us through augmented reality and virtual reality. So over to you, Lalit. Sure.
Okay. Everybody's talking about IoT, Internet of Things. And we had some other internet also, right? Before that, what was that for? Like somebody started with Indus Valley, or so I'll take you back into our Indian philosophies. We have two Diwalis, right? One, the Diwali of gods, which was few days ago on Purnima, and then there's a normal Diwali. So we started out with the Internet of something, but it became Internet of Things. And what's one of the key goal of Internet of Things? To make things more intelligent, more smarter, right? And previous Internet, which uses browser and all that, that was Internet of People. And I thought one of the goal of that was to make people smarter. But in this process of Internet of Things and uh, artificial intelligence and cloud, I think the things are getting smarter and smarter, and people. So my talk is a little bit about how do we bring this Internet of People and Internet of Things together, and particularly I'll focus on industry, IoT, and that's where, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But what I thought is, instead of me talking, and sometimes I talk in a very monotonous fashion, so, and that after lunch is not a good thing. So I thought I'll start with some video and then do a slideshow and shut up. So can you play the first movie? So let me talk a little bit about Eon reality, its background, where it has come from, what its purpose, and then I talk about some case studies in the, particularly in the industry context, since we're talking about IoT and industry. Uh, I hope it works. Am I pointing it to the wrong place? Now, this is, let's understand a little bit about now. Let me first cover the people side of it, since I whetted your appetite about IOP or Internet of People. I mean, disruption has been taking place for eons. The technology is really, replacing jobs. So one side, technology is taking away job, technology creates new job. It takes away job, it creates new job. And that disruption, speed with which it is happening, is increasing rapidly. So while machines and everything around us has become smarter, but skills and the knowledge required to perform those new kind of industrial jobs is becoming a challenge. This is a good graph for last 7 8 years of manufacturing jobs that have been posted in US alone, and you see in orange the number of jobs filled. The gap is increasing, meaning there's not enough people with the skills which are required to do the manufacturing jobs today, and that gap is not getting narrowed. And we all understand the reason behind. Not only the budgets, the teachers, the uh, resources required to teach is reducing, but even more painful problem is that the complexity and amount of data and knowledge required to do the job is increasing exponentially. So it's becoming a perpetual challenge. How do we create people with skills to do the jobs? So if we don't address that, what are we creating? So the negative scenario is, okay, we can give people basic income. Some of the countries are piloting it, so that people can just do nothing but 3 hours, 6 hours, just becoming, playing the games and just spend their time in some of those places. Or increase time to do Facebook. I mean, today we are spending lots of time, but maybe instead of 20 minutes, 30 minutes to 8 hours, if you get paid. I mean, this is again a negative scenario because it's not just about giving money. It's not about job is not just about money. It's about, I mean, you will agree, it's about sense of purpose, belonging, the social aspects. All that is important. So that's not a very positive outcome. The positive outcome would be what if we could empower those people? And we are talking about 2.5 billion workers and 1.2 billion students in the world. So the Eon, the company I'm talking about, has come up with a new framework, vision called Human 2.0, with the purpose of empowering those 3.5 billion people so that we can create a positive outcome, so that they are prepared to do the jobs required of the future. And not only jobs required of the future, but they are able to, in that fashion, create and operate a lot more smarter industry 4.0 we have been talking about to really make it happen. Because all said and done, if you make industry 4.0 completely automated, then we do see disasters. So it's all, we all agree that, and in fact, previous speaker made it very clear that without people, it's not possible. Okay, now, I think why focus on, people say, okay, how is that AVR makes us smarter? I mean, you will agree with me that people say 40% of our cortex is in this device. Take that phone away and you are not using it. And then remaining 60% is up here. And how these two cortex communicate? At the speed of sound. Now, which is not that fast. If you take that away and bring it to here, then the speed between here or the distance between this cortex and this cortex is reduced. And that's what the premise of AVR is. Of course, even faster you can go if you follow Elon Musk, who says you can inject neural waves and then it would be sitting right there. But you know, that may be 20, 30, 40 years away. Today we can definitely go from reduce the speed from that down to this. So, I will just take you through some more context before I go. And this is a very, very interesting point I mentioned, that cloud, IoT, AI, they have been evolving. I mean, this is my area of expertise before I got into KBR. I spent 20 years at IBM, and my focus was what's through AI and cloud, IoT. And more and more I think about it, idea was to make machines smarter and smarter and smarter. With AR, and particularly AR, we are now synergizing, leveraging that. So AR sits right on the middle of it to leverage the advancements which have been taking place. And you may also recall that AR and VR particularly has not been new. It's been around since many, many years. But with the advent, with the speed, with the growth of these three areas, AR and VR are growing. In fact, 2016 was seen as the point of inflection. So whatever investments, etc., have been taking place now are seeing the fruition. For example, Eon itself, we are a company for last 18 years, and yes, the growth has been like that. And last 18 months, we suddenly are seeing that explosive growth. So just to further reiterate, it's a 18-year-old company, yeah, only 18-year-old, against some of the big companies which have been around 100 years, but 18 years or primarily in not just AR/VR, primarily in applying AR/VR for the knowledge development. While 99% of AR/VR companies focused on edutainment, or mostly, not edutainment, mostly entertainment, and the video games, in the other areas of entertainment, while AR/VR applied to skills and growth, I mean, the knowledge growth has been the focus of Eon. Been around in 30 countries and it's expanding very, very rapidly. So there are 100 such centers of excellence. And I'll talk a little bit about that, not now, but we are in the process in coming to India and trying to create 5 or 10 such, in fact, 10 of these centers we are coming out with FDI and we are creating partnerships. So with that, I just mentioned on the left, you see the framework. We have, at the heart of Eon is a software which allow us to build those applications. Yes, there are 5,000 plus applications already in various domains, including starting mostly from energy and industrial sector, but now a lot more in education, in vocational training, and now even K-12. And then using IDC or interactive digital center in specific countries, which is used as a capacity and capability building. And through that, we create an ecosystem of skills, knowledge, and a place where this knowledge of applications can be aggregated and then disseminated to larger customers and users. And then, of course, we have starting with energy and other industrial customers as the starting focus on the industry, but aviation, healthcare, education, defense, and of course, tourism and construction, etc. But these are the key strengths of Eon is in applying it for industrial sector. And when we talk about AR, VR, we integrate with all kinds of devices. In fact, I could say from a phone to dome, I can, by plugging this onto my phone, I can convert this into a very simplest form of virtual reality. And I can take my business card and use QR code and convert that into an AR device. But then from that phone to dome. So there are some devices which require a lot of interaction, or in a classroom environment where you have 20 people and a teacher and we are all immersed wearing glasses with sensors and we can do interaction jointly. Or half of the people here and some expert is sitting maybe 10,000 miles away. I mean, we talked about this digital twin. All those kind of a scenario we can use using variety of devices, from holograms to head-mounted devices like HTC Vive, and then AR glasses like Vuzix and Google glasses, etc. So hardware has been constantly changing and it will evolve for sure. And that's where this particular chart really highlights that, okay, tip of the iceberg are all these devices, but integrating with engineering data related to the plans, the configurations, all kinds of data, or related to ERP, so that you know whether certain parts of the, in case of maintenance scenario, is that available, or should I change it now? It could go for little longer, but if I'm doing some major maintenance and if the part is available, I might as well change it now. So depending upon the complexity, the impact, the value, you can make those decisions. So variety of integrating with various systems is one of the key reasons why we are able to create very, very sophisticated AR, VR for industrial customers. So this is a very interesting observation, that while much of the IT has been given to people who are anyway IT rich, like the bank user, the white collar workers, but very little in terms of overall ICT support is given to the shop floor workers. So what you see in this chart on the left side, if you can give people using virtual reality immersive training, when people are immersed in the plant, in the specific parts, while the systems are working, which you can't do it in real world. So that could be using VR. Then there you could use some sophisticated and complex devices in a group environment, and then you give it on devices like this. Let him take home and practice it again and again until he gets better. And then when he goes to write, when he really goes to the job, 99% he may have learned, but now on the job, when I am opening it and I forgot, am I supposed to turn this bolt clockwise or anti-clockwise based on the sensor, because it is tracking where you are and it can tell you, right, you're in the third layer, and it tell you this particular device you need to rotate anti-clockwise, not clockwise. So leveraging IoT, leveraging image sensing, all kinds of sensor used, and you are able to use VR for the training, AR for on the job. No, I'm not pressing something. And since it is focused on industry, and this is the first set of slides, you can see we have been for 18 years, have been working with all kinds of customers who are household names, from Boeing to Exxon Mobil to BP, GE, Samsung, Mercedes, you name it. And normally, to give you real experience, I would see a set of customers in an experience centers like this IDC, and we normally show this different examples. So that virtual tour, taking them to the whole facility may take 2 hours. But I just, for the purpose of just demonstration, I've left it on a chart here. That variety of real life applications like that. On the second right, you see the Mercedes scenario where an engineer is opening the machine to the middle at the top is a lifting operation in an offshore oil rig, which is very difficult to really take somebody to, even young engineers to train, because some of these facilities are both expensive as well as risky to take. So these are all virtual scenarios which are simulated from the entire factory to specific parts, specific operations, and then can be delivered using API operations. So this is again a real simulated factory for Exxon Mobil plant. This is a scenario of using AR, knowledge assist, while you are doing a maintenance for a very expensive MRI. So that while you're doing it, your glasses allow you to see more than others can see and do them. So that you are assisted life messages, virtual waste management. So these are real case studies where we have worked with customers using our medical scenario. These are some of the polytechnic students are going crazy these days. So Singapore particularly has gone crazy using this as a way of teaching in most of its engineering and polytechnic colleges. In fact, now number one technical university, NTU, is creating a massive education transformation project of $75 million, of which the EON is providing the infrastructure. Okay, I'm going to skip through education customers from university, who's who, to government level rollout across the country. And in some cases, we only have smaller countries, we only have one IDC, but India and China being a bigger focus and a growth countries, we are looking to create about 10 centers covering entire geographies, but also focus on different sectors. For example, industrial sector, aviation sector, medical sector, etc. Again, there are studies after studies to show that the traditional way of learning, whether in a college environment or in an industrial training environment, the cost is significantly reduced, the retention is much better, and people are getting much better scores. They are able to make better decisions when they go on the job. Because now you're visualizing in 3D and you're learning various motive scenarios. And these are some of the findings from the two companies here. One is While and Rig on the right side, and likewise from the industry. So what I'm almost getting to the end, and I think I was maybe I'm reaching end of the IoT device sensor in a gate block. But what I like to do is I talked about virtual reality for training. You get immersed in it, so you're completely blocked, and then you have AR. And one of the nice way of AR is through AR glasses, which are sort of, you can see through, but you see more than others. So for that, I just want to share one video, which is the latest, about a month ago. Singapore baggage handlers are using it. So at the airport, at the Changi airport, when you give your bag, sometimes the bag instead of reaching Delhi, it reaches Istanbul. So to reduce all those scenarios, as well as right bags are placed in the right containers, and instead of those walkie-talkies make those mistakes in that noisy environment. And because it's a very new thing, and about 600 of those people were going in that little car, how they are using it, they are on the job, and also how they are using to learn first HTC wire, headphone, so that will convey everything, even though it's like, call it an industry, won't you? So can you play the SATs video? There's no sound. Now this is the VR side, they are learning in an immersive environment. So first they are getting trained. And now next what you see is now you are on the job. Same guys who got trained, but now they are doing the job. Really looking at those boxes. They can see everything. Now they realize where what will go. And those glasses they are wearing also has a little camera, and through that camera, the people at the control room are looking at how they are really. So that it has a potential to get rid of those walkie-talkie, and the job is done much more efficiently. But more importantly, what target they have is to reduce 1 hour it takes to keep the plane on the tarmac, to reduce it to 45 minutes. And 15 minutes saved for one plane is a huge saving. Singapore is looking at having more people coming. Maybe they will delay building one more terminal. So it's quite a large business impact project. And only then from us who take the flights regularly, now we'll have to rush and quickly get inside the plane because it's not standing for 1 hour anymore. So with that, I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you very much. So we have a big question, but I thought can be icebreaker to open up before we move for debate. So my first question is to Sri Kumar. You talked about power and energy industry. So how the power transmission companies can take advantage of industrial IoT? What Electron is doing?
Hello. I think the important thing there is about we are also going to change a lot of things about the products. Things are going to change. It's not going to be anymore the way it is today. You look at a medium voltage, switchgear device today. There are very little electronic component, but there will be a lot more sensors, a lot more, analytics built into so that it can predict in terms of when it has to be maintained, and if there is faults that are coming, they can segregate the fault and identify, what could be the cause. So I think there is a lot more opportunity in terms of, giving a lot more value to the customer. Second thing I see is there is a lot more changes that is going to come in the design of those products. Okay. Third one I believe is almost all these products in the industrial world is having higher efficiency. The reliability is going to be a major player. This reliability of these equipments are going to go higher with the use of this data. Okay, so I think three important things. One is the design of these products are going to change a big way, and they're going to be more efficient, more reliable, and of course, we talked about some of the use cases where safety is an important thing. So it's going to be more safe. Okay.
Thank you, Sri Kumar. My question to Krishna, Schneider is focusing a lot more on digital energy, and so how you see that is shaping up, and what's the future in that domain?
So yeah, I just told you, what we want to do is to deeply understand, our customers, right, and bring those market insights to, to real value of using our platforms, right? For example, I just wanted to understand, based on the futuristic discussion that I had. So, how many of us have solar panels or use solar energy at home here? Okay, so it's just started, right? But how many of us probably have a power backup at home, either through a UPS or a generator?
Inverter.
You see, so there's almost all of them, right? For example, if you look at, globally, we have a lot of understanding, and we probably have a lot of theoretical understanding saying grid parity and, what's going to happen, cost and levelized cost of energy and all these technical terms, right? But the key is to probably have local understanding of what's happening in real markets, right? So, for example, in India, power was cheap, right? And at a point in time, people never really thought about it, right? So that's what you call a passive customer, right? Whereas at some point in time, when we started using LCD TVs in India or particularly Wi-Fi at home, suddenly we were making active choices and decisions about, okay, I need to have power available at a time, right? And now you suddenly see all of us lifting hand for, I have power backup, right? So basically those are the kind of, understanding that we want to bring to the table, and bring those insights to the ecosystem, work with people, because we know that we do not understand and we do not do everything that can solve the problem, right? So we are willing to work, humble enough to understand that we don't know everything. Yeah, that's one thing. For example, there's another interesting, when we talk about future and when it's coming and so on. We were talking about signposts, right? For example, what can fundamentally change this move to in the value chain we spoke about? Maybe, for example, in the next 5-10 years, we are talking a lot about adoption of EV in the country, right? So if we start using an electric car at home, maybe you would probably become very, very aware about what's your energy, where it's coming from, what can I do to improve it, and so on, right? So those are the kind of signposts and the inflection points that we look for, right? And you don't know, that can actually reinforce, or you could find out it's probably changing the dynamic a bit, right? So that's a few of those angles, right? For another interesting parallel example, yeah, how many of us actually still use Indian subsidized LPG gas at home? And how many of us are using market price LPG cylinder or piped gas? How many of us, in fact? So, in fact, 10 years back, all of us would have lifted hands for subsidized LPG cylinder, right? That's a classic example of regulation within a 10-year period. Fundamentally, things change, right? And that's a great example of regulation, policy, and customers thinking, right? Because many of us actually willingly gave up subsidized cylinders, right? So those are the kind of things that we would like to bring to the table, apart from being a tech company, right? So
Interesting.
that's the idea.
Thanks, Krishna. Thank you. Vishal, you talked about energy forecasting. So tell us how IoT can help us in forecasting.
Forecasting depends pretty much on the quality data. And there are segments where you face challenges to get even the basic level of data. For example, we got an assignment where all the wind projects in Rajasthan, utility wanted real-time data streaming. The problem was most of the wind in Rajasthan is centered around Jaisalmer, very close to Pakistan border. Even mobile signal is not very steady. So the first challenge was, can you really get data? You put a lease line, you can start getting data, but then the cost of putting lease line to all those remote wind farms was very large. And this project was coming from a private segment, they wanted a cheaper solution. So the first problem was, how do we extract data? We kind of combined couple of modems. We used standard GPRS hardware, custom programmed it so that it can interface the communication between the meters which were already installed, and then there were few meters we installed, and started transmitting data. The project took just 3 months. Now all the wind farms are visible in real time to the grid operator at Jaipur. So this is just one use case of IoT or application of IoT in this. There are multiple other use cases specifically on the performance monitoring side of transmission, distribution, or even generation assets. So it's quite a big area actually.
Interesting. Thank you. So my next question is with Lalitji. When we are talking about training through virtual reality, what sort of difference you have seen in the conventional training and this new style of training?
Yes, I think there is a order of magnitude improvement in the learning outcomes. The ability to understand better, remember longer, and when you make decision better. And these are the studies after studies, ABC studies, and not only studies in US. Studies have been done even in Africa, done at the industrial worker level as well as at the primary school kids. And another very interesting thing found was that retention not only increased but also interest level increased. So some of the African countries, school dropout was very rapidly increasing. Now with this method, in fact, one such project we do with UNIDO has sponsored in Ethiopia. Now the schools are now filled with kids because they are more interested emerge. But I think I'll also ask you something. When it comes to think about, our mind is designed to think and understand in a 3D. But last 200 years, we have been taught in 2D. If somebody has to talk about this room or talk about this machine, first somebody draws a picture, maybe in a book or on a PowerPoint. So that's really a abstraction. I mean, even we dream in 3D, by the way. We don't dream in 2D. So 3D really has brought our learning closer to the way we are designed to learn. So it's no wonder that these studies are showing time and again so that improvement has happened. So while, uh, while this has created a massive impact in the way we learn, and better we learn, I mean, we are as human beings for generations are always eager to learn. That's one innate need we have. So it has also satisfied us as human beings. And more we understand better, more we become more innovators. When we visualize something, even in an industrial environment, we are able to think of even improving better. So I think from using VR for learning and then using the same visualization on the job gives us a better comfort feel to make certain decisions. And this is something I've now talked to a number of CEOs, and they say that is particularly with IoT, the amount of data now we are getting is mind boggling and all kinds of analytics, but finally it tells you something which I'm not used to do using my past methods of management. So I get all this data, I'm asked to take some decisions to press the button, make that decision, and I shy away last minute. But with visualization, I'm able to understand that if I did that, actually it is what's going to happen. So I think it has fundamentally has an opportunity, and while it is in the beginning, but I see the screen out there, 2D screen, the computers we use, the phone, will have to throw away in 3 to 5 years. So we all not get too attached. Let's learn, use it maximum and throw it or use it as a paperweight soon.
Thank you. Great. So just before we can have one or two questions, but let me quickly share with you. I haven't presented or I haven't really talked about you, but why Arrow is here in this event, or why you are a key sponsor of this event. So Arrow is a leading component supplier based out of US, and we are distributing almost 150 semiconductor passive and connector suppliers. And we cater to each and every embedded electronic block of IoT products, be it sensors, be it microcontrollers, controllers, or connectivity solutions. In connectivity solutions, you may need Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LoRa, or GSM GPRS. In fact, recent ESL tender calls for 3G connectivity into energy meter for automatic meter reading. So in all those blocks, we are not only supplying the components, but we have a very large field application engineering team who can support designers into development of all these applications and product. And that's the reason we are investing heavily into IoT segment, and anyone who is doing any type of development or R&D into IoT embedded applications, please reach out to us. We have an excellent support system as well as sampling system to help you and handhold you in developing prototypes or proof of concept. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thanks a lot. I hate to interrupt. This has been the most educational panel, right? But unfortunately, that was the last panel. So thank you all very much. I would request Sanjeev to hand over a token moment
Sir,
of.
question answer, sir. There's a small question.
We'll probably skip right now because we have last one session
As
left.
it's relating
If you
to-
guys can please take it outside. Please.
Okay, we all will be waiting here and we can spend another 20 minutes and you can reach out to us and ask question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Vishal. Oh, that is for Shri. Thank you. Shri Kumar. Thank you. Okay, later.
I would request Sibesh Garg to come on stage, please.
Thank you. Lalitji. Thank you.
Sanjeev.
Thank you. ये ले लो